Lagos. Yes, look at that convolution. Yeah, it is a city. It is in Nigeria, it's not in China. Good morning and welcome. This is Lagos. I'm Ayo Makide.
Well, today, as a result of the prices of petrol, the landing costs, these chaps, the NATO folks say they've directed their members to withdraw their services beginning today. Well, they're saying that it's intended to drive their message home and ensure that maybe the authorities listen to their pleas or cry and do something about it. So I think you might have to get a hold of them and find out, look, how this is going to address all of those challenges, because, I mean, everyone knows that the conditions not exactly friendly. So the question about all of these protests, you just wonder, first, they're going to make things worse for the average person out there. Could it be any worse than it already is before? Who knows? Who knows?
Sorry, Chamberlain, take me back a bit. Did you say that they're protesting the increase in price of, is it petrol?
Well, they say, look, the landing cost is affecting them. They can't do business as they ought to, so things are going so high. And who knows? This suggests that it's pointing to the price of petrol. So if perhaps they're allowed to go the way they want, of course it will impact the price of petrol at the pump price. So you just wonder where else to turn with all of these things. Everybody, all those in that sector, almost all of them are making a case as to why there should be an increase. Don't forget, in some areas at the moment, it's 670 naira per litre.
Yes.
In some areas.
So, anyways, I'm sure we'll see that in the papers. From what we understand, subsidy is back. I mean, it's been back a long while, but government has been quiet about it. It'll be very interesting to get some very strong clarification from the Ministry of Petroleum Resources as to what exactly is happening in that sector. If subsidy is back, we need to know. Is it just petrol that's been subsidized? Because these people you're talking about most likely use diesel. And I don't think diesel, you know...
NATO?
Yes, NATO. If they're the heavy truck drivers and all of those, you know, heavy-duty vehicles, most likely using diesel. And the cost of diesel right now is gone, you know, it's hitting the roof. You know, people are really complaining. Those who buy
it's been
diesel,
deregulated, though.
It has been. I mean, so also has petrol. Isn't that what we're told? Isn't that what the president announced? But we understand that subsidy is now back, even through the back door. But we'll see it in the dailies, and I'm sure we can highlight it then. Ayo.
It will be interesting, really, guys, to know exactly what that story is about, because if indeed subsidy is back from the back door, as some say, and you're reiterating more, then how come there is more FAC to the federal and state governments as well as local governments? But incidentally, that is what the business news is also focusing on this morning, focusing on the NATO strike and the search for a solution, particularly as it will affect business. That is up at 10 o'clock, top of the hour.
Yeah, let's start with the Guardian newspaper here today. Unstable forex rate and inflation. More pain for households. Firms as price gouging unsettles economy. That is the big lead on the front page here this morning. It's all about the economy, getting it right or wrong. So they've got images of key persons there who should be doing something about all of this. Yeah, you can see customs there as well. Many always wonder why, if FG increases the revenue for customs, and customs makes more money by taxing the people a lot more, meaning government makes more money and the people are impoverished. So you wonder, what kind of policy is that then? Is it a people-friendly policy? You'll guess me as good as anybody else's. And then they also have several stories there, but that is for the Guardian at the moment.
Well, let's take a look at the Abuja Inquirer for you, and they have this: tough times. Federal government, governor tell Nigerians to pray, fast.
I assume they're doing the
Don't
same
let me
thing.
say what's on my mind, Chamberlain. I mean, I know it's the fasting season, but by all means, can they stop reiterating this? Yes, it's the Lenten season for Christians, and there's also Ramadan, I think, also almost here for Muslims, if not here already. So, but do they have to say this all of the time? I mean, government's work is to work. It is the job of religious people to pray and fast. But this is what we're seeing on the front page right now. Federal government governor tell Nigerians to pray fast. Problems inherited. That's according to the secretary to the government of the Federation. And look at this warning. AFDB warns of social unrest. That's the lead story on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer.
Interestingly, some people are already giving a clapback where they're saying, how about the fasting that Nigerians have been fasting all the while? Well, the details are on the inside pages of that paper. This Nigerian newspaper is perhaps saying something related, perhaps different. Look at it. Give us this day our daily bread. That's something you usually say when you fast and pray. But look at the riders. Bakers, consumers lament high costs. Price of average loaf hit 1,200 naira. Will shut down production soon due to rising rate of bakery inputs. That's according to the Bakers Union. The details you'll find on page 4, among other stories today.
The front page of Blueprints: bandits kill 12, burn 17 houses in Kaduna community. I know you may say yet again. So, and then the writer: kidnap 9 women in Zamfara. Plateau APC spokesman killed. Governor Sani saddened by renewed attacks. Lagbaja charges troops on diligence commitments. That's Blueprint.
Well, you can't ignore the front page of Business Day this morning. Take a look at what it's saying. Petrol subsidy nears 1 trillion naira monthly, surpasses pre-Tinubu levels. So that's the story on the front page of Business Day for you.
The Nigerian Observer leads with this one. FX crisis opens opportunity for export, local fabrication. That's according to industrialists. Exactly what does that mean? The details are on the front page, continues on page 2. And the writer, as weak naira takes toll on companies' operations. Well, something to definitely take a look at. That's the lead story of the Nigerian Observer today.
Edo 2024 on the front page of News Direct. Confusion tears APC apart as 3 aspirants lay claim to governorship ticket. So there you go again. I'm not sure anyone is surprised at some of these things, the way they turn out. But this is the headache of the APC at the moment.
What a big headache they have. What a massive headache they have in Edo State. Well, take a look at what you find on the front page of this is New Telegraph now. New Telegraph it is. Tinubu's reform agenda turning millions to beggars. That's according to Catholic bishops. You see a number of writers there. As Atiku says, President lacks ideas to fix economy. Hardship can lead to social unrest in Nigeria, Ethiopia, Angola, Kenya. That's according to the AFDB. So the warning wasn't just issued for Nigeria alone. It was issued for a number of other African countries that have taken away petrol subsidies, just to qualify why we're all in the same group. We'll overcome current challenges. Federal government tells PDP governors. President won't resign, minister says. That's the lead story on the front page of New Telegraph. James?
Yeah, so I think that if you take a look at the front page of The Guardian at the moment, where they talk about more pain for household firms as price gouging unsettles economy. And it's such that it's, sometimes no words to actually describe how these things are playing themselves out. Because yes, They even tell you when you get to the markets, and they tell you this is the price at the moment.
Yeah.
So if you step out and come back, chances are that the price will go higher. And of course, the natural thing many will wonder is, look, so what is the basis for all of these things? How do they happen almost, in fact, I think reckless abandon is the word. Every week you get into a certain place to purchase an item, is gone up. So all of these people who they listed here, from the customs to the CBN governor to Minister of Agric, Minister of Budget and Planning, Minister of Finance, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, led by the President, they all have got to perhaps come up a lot more, because right now, whatever plan that they have there, many, in some cases, have no idea, such that they could even have the kind of hope or the impression that they know what they're doing and they've got this. So people don't get that sense in the first instance. So they have to have that before they can then say, okay, it's not all doom and gloom. But if, for instance, you see customs where you hear they increase the revenue target for customs, customs don't manufacture anything. They go in and tax people, businesses. If some people say, how much is it even to even clear a container? Is it 17 or 21 million? No matter what is in it, that cannot be good for any economy, because if government is seen to be making more money and the people are not making more money, what kind of policy? It tells you that's a direct result of your policy in terms of it is a bad policy. Government agencies like customs cannot be making more money, and firms are struggling, businesses are closing, salaries are not being paid. It's definitely not good. That should not be the case. And so for the CBN and all the others here, they definitely have got to do a lot more.
I'm even wondering whether, I think that somehow the editor of The Guardian might have been a bit, or maybe the person who wrote the headlines might have been lost for words. Because you see, gouging is usually used in a very negative sense, in the sense that you see one price here, when you go to pay for it, you know, it is a different price. And that's supposed to be something but when the economy is such that that is what it is, such that you cannot even, nothing is stable, FX, which a number of people rely upon, you know, to import or to bring in basic products, is going up hourly, almost hourly. Can we really still use that same term, gouging? Just a few days ago, on Friday, we heard that the FCCPC shut down the supermarket here in Abuja. You should read the sentiment online about how people felt, because people even think that, and this is not me making any promo for the supermarket, that it is one of the supermarkets that you get the cheapest prices. So when you find the FCCPC shutting down such a supermarket, people are saying, are you really, you know, facing the reality of what exactly is going on? I mean, by evening of that same day, thankfully, the supermarket was opened again. But it doesn't look like sometimes government is in tandem or in reality with what businesses are going through to be able to survive and to be able to, you know, make some profit in this season. That's not to say that the FCCPC shouldn't do its work, but at the same time, they have to do it in a manner that looks like it's fair, it's transparent, and, you know, it really takes both customers and also the businesses into account. I'm looking at another story that stands out for me this morning, and this is, can you really ignore what's happening on the front page of This Nigeria? I mean, give us this day our daily bread, but perhaps I want to take a look at that. I would like to take a look at Business Day. Petrol subsidy nears 1 trillion naira monthly, surpasses pre-Tinubu levels, or pre-Tinubu levels. We need clarity on this. I'm glad that, you know, the next segment at 10 o'clock will be taking, you know, a more detailed look at this. But in the meantime, we need somebody to actually tell us what exactly is going on. We understand that the landing price of petrol now is 1,200. I mean, no one can actually ask that petrol be sold at 1,200 at this point. But if indeed subsidy is back, don't the people have a right to know what exactly is happening? We need clarity. There needs to be transparency. There needs to be honesty. There needs to be communication. Things don't have to go south first before we now begin to talk about it. Ayo.
Well, at some point, if you recall, the group managing director of the NNPC had denied that subsidy has returned to the petroleum space. Well, so as you said, I agree completely, we need clarity. So if subsidy is back again, I ask that question, how come there is more money for the federal government and states to share? Exactly, Malpe, we do need clarity. My trip this morning is to the front page of the Nigerian Observer. At the bottom of the page is that story that everyone has talked about, Malpe. You've also mentioned it on the front page of another paper. Rising cost may lead to unrest in Nigeria. Others. It's at the bottom of the page, on the front page of the Nigerian Observer this morning, and it is definitely something to give attention to. Remember the Arab Springs? Remember the fact that it was such a thing as, prices just escalating, in ways that people cannot even understand, that led to some of these unrests, rising cost of living, difficulty in people being able to really understand exactly what is going on here. Well, Mark, you talked about price gouging, I think the meaning could be attributed to the North American meaning given to it. The second meaning, an Oxford dictionary that says price gouging is the overcharge of, overpricing and overcharge of goods and services. That is what that means. And so definitely something to give attention to. I hope that the federal government is listening. I hope someone is paying attention. And I hope someone has a communication plan, because without talking to the people, we cannot survive this particular situation we are finding ourselves. And we have to be very, very attentive to the needs of the people. But that's the Nigerian Observer this morning, and that wraps up a look at some of the papers today. We're back in a moment to begin to take on the issues. Do stay with us.
In this era of recovery, ability to engage virtual stakeholders successfully could be a veritable source of sustainable competitive advantage. Embark on a transformative journey with Texam's Effective Leadership in a Distributed World program. Join us from 9th to 23rd March 2024 for a dynamic 3-week online experience and a 3-day face-to-face session in the UK. This program will be delivered by illustrious Oxford-trained Professor Roger Dell's London Business School alumnus, Professor Paul Griffith, and Oscar-winning Ambassador Charles Crawford. Secure 25% early bird discount. Pay 2,407,500 naira for online and 7,864,500 naira for the UK and online sessions. Achieve, optimize, and win with Texam. For more information, email exec@texam.co.uk or call +44 7425 883791. Texam. Insights that inspire. Actions that change the world.
Dr. Umar Ardo Book Launching Committee invites the general public to the public presentation event of the book, Cult and Politics. Date, Saturday, 24th February 2024. Time, 10 a.m. prompt. Venue, Yaradua Center, Wusu Zone 4, Abuja. Special guest of honor, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, GCFR. Chairman of the occasion, Professor Angu Abdullahi, CON. Guest of honor, Senator Doye Diri, Governor, Bayelsa State. Real Father of the Day, Alhaji Barkindo Aliyu Mustafa, PhD, the Lamido Fambina. Elder Statesman of the Day, Alhaji Tanko Yakasai, OFR. Book presenter, His Excellency Dr. Kwesilieze Nwodo, CON. Chief launcher, Dr. Honorable Abiy Precious Sekibo, Achin III of Okrika. Book reviewer, Professor C.J. Dakas, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Announcer, Alhaji Shehu Musa Gabam, Makaman Tilde, Chairman Steering Committee.
The journey to success is not always smooth. There are rough patches on the path to accomplishment. The struggle continues until solution appears that launches you to the world of your dreams, protecting, securing, and ensuring that you reach your goals. At International Energy Insurance, we know that the journey to actualizing your dreams could be tough, but we are always there to support you and help you prepare for the unexpected. International Energy Insurance is a Nuremberger company now positioned to serve you better. International Energy Insurance PLC. Energy to care.
In a key announcement today, the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, Murphy, has scheduled the first ever public wealth management conference in Nigeria. themed Championing Nigeria's Economic Prosperity to outline Murphy's strategic approach to optimizing public wealth and enhancing investment returns. Date February 20th, 2024. Registration starts at 8 a.m. Events proper 9 a.m. Venue the Congress Hall of the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja. The conference will foster discussions on collaboration with ministries, departments, and agencies for improved asset management. For more information on the conference and registration details, please visit Murphy's official website at www.murphy.com.ng.
Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. That is who we've got here this morning. Dr. Bosun Tijani is the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here. So, what a time we've got on our hands today in the country, generally speaking. But let's start off from, I think it's part of what we spoke about the last time you were here, this 3 million technical talents in the next 4 years, you said. And I know you've been speaking up about it. And so bring us up to speed. Where are you at the moment with that?
It's one of our flagship programs within the ministry. I think we carefully crafted that program to fill a gap that exists in the world, which is the fact that technology is penetrating everything we do. But we need humans to build technology. That's the fact. But most of the countries who consume technology significantly have aging population, which means they don't have the workforce to actually drive the development of technology. And in our case, we have 60% of our 230 million people under the age of 25, which means we have that vibrant group of people that we actually should be nudging towards becoming the provider of knowledge for the technical world. And that's what we've decided to do within this government. The president was quite clear about the fact that we needed to create jobs, we needed to train people. And he was particularly bullish about creating talent for technology. So what we've done with the program is to launch it. It was something I launched probably in the next month after inauguration. We came up with an implementation model because this is not a program that we want to do. We don't want to throw the numbers out there. If we can truly train 3 million technical talents in Nigeria, we will change our economy significantly because technologies contribute into how you build the complexity of the economy. So we came up with our implementation strategy of let's test with 1%, because the goal is not just to train them, but train and place them into jobs. So if we can test in the first 3 months with 1%, we'll learn quickly how to truly scale from training to placement. Then we go to 10%, which is 300,000 people. Then we can then go towards fulfilling the 3 million. So we started with the 1%. A lot of them will be completing their the training in the month of February into March. And we have over 1,000 companies that have shown interest in actually taking them on as intern so that they can move from just basic knowledge of technology into them being able to apply. And we are very hopeful that in the next 1 or 2 weeks, we'll start to announce those placements because I know some of these companies.
Is it software or hardware?
Oh, it's so there's about 10 areas that we focus on, skills area that we focus on, from things like cybersecurity to software development, back-end and front-end, to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and quite a number of ranging, including design as well.
But
largely on the
soft side.
On the soft side. This first batch is likely on the soft side, yeah.
I do intend to go into the hard side as time goes on.
We might, because what we did was we didn't just pluck those areas randomly. There's an analysis that NIT, is the IT development agency, which is under my ministry. They looked at the gap within the talent gap within the market. So what are the skill set that companies are looking for people to fill that we don't have enough people within the country to fill? And the hard side of things is not something where our ecosystem is quite strong yet. Because the focus of this is on jobs, we're not just futuristically just training. We want to place people into jobs immediately. So we focus on what the market is looking for.
So what is the overall targets? I know you see the big picture that you're working towards. So what is it, if we're looking from the outside, that you want to achieve at the end of this program?
At the end, is one to make Nigeria a net exporter of technology talent. And by net exporter, we don't mean that people necessarily live in, because within the technology space, you can now work remotely. I've been part of the tech space for the last 15 years as well. The current development in this tech startup space has been driven by less than 10,000 technical talent. The almighty Andela, which is a well-known startup that does training, they've not trained up to 10,000 people in Nigeria. Yet they've been quite successful in helping to strengthen that ecosystem. So if where we are today has been built, the tech startup side of the sector has been built by less than 10,000. Imagine what will happen when we train. And because we have a president that is also quite keen on technology, he's done it significantly in Lagos. He understands the use of technology. We're constantly driving on transforming government services using technology. We cannot do all those things without the talent. So talent is the prerequisite for our digital economy. When we train people, they can build, we can export. India did it. It's nothing new. You know, India was the source of technology talent for many years. It's our time, because we have everything it takes to actually be able to get there.
I'm glad that you're starting, you know, where the market, excuse me, really needs talent at this time. I remember that Governor Hope Uzodinma also talked about that while he was campaigning.
Absolutely.
You followed the campaign and how much controversy it created.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, is it finding jobs for 2 million people abroad? And that's what people imagined. But that was later on explained. How are you collaborating with the states? And I'm wondering how this 30,000 people has spread.
Also, we released a document publicly because we actually designed a model for the selection. So we look at the economic complexity of the state, the population of the state, and the ability to uptake the talents that we train. So there's an allocation that has been done based on that complexity. So you see Kano has, for instance, much more allocation. Lagos has much more allocation. So these things have been calculated based on the reality of each state. Of course, when we opened the application, that also informed, we had to tweak, you know, our model, because we got more applications from certain states. So it was important that we also reflect that in the way we're selecting. But our hope is that everyone that truly wants to be part of this will get the opportunity. So far, we have about 1.8 million applications. Our goal is to get to 3 million, but we still have about 2-3 years to get there. So we are encouraging people to be part of it. We're working with the state, because I'm the chairman of the Council for ICT, which includes all the commissioners from all the states. We have a group where we engage. So we work quite closely with them, leveraging their infrastructure. Because the way we're doing the training is not just for virtual training. It's a blended learning approach where you learn online, but weekly there are centers where you go into to then learn physically, but also build with people. Because with technology, it's not something you just learn and you become an expert if you don't practice. So we've also introduced what we call the learning cluster, which has been supported by IHS, for instance. They're funding that entire process. Government is now investing in it. MTN is also committing 3 billion naira to this program. So we're mobilizing resources. We're talking to World Bank to actually get this going, getting as much support as we can.
And just one more thing. Now, the reason why I'd asked you about hardware is because we also know that we're spending a lot of, because right now we know we're pressed for foreign exchange. While we want to be able to export our talent, we also want to be sure that we're able to reduce how much we spend buying hardware from abroad. So I'm sure that at some point we might need to start focusing on production, because part of the reason why we're where we are is that we do not even have any area, you know, around production. We're focusing more on services, which is a good thing. But at the same time, you know, do you see any hope?
I think government
kickstarting.
No, government historically has actually supported the manufacturing of devices in Nigeria. When you look at the support that the likes of Xerox is gotten from government, I think we used to have Homotech as well, and a couple of other.
As you said, we used to have. Xerox is the only one I know right now.
Well, so I think it's a combination. You know, for someone like me coming from the ecosystem, it's a combination. When we build these things, it's not just enough to support individual businesses. We have to build the entire ecosystem for it. The academic institutions must participate in research projects. And if you look at our strategic blueprint, you also see that that's an area where we're investing significantly. In the first 3 months of coming into office, we've launched a research funding scheme where we've already funded 45 artificial intelligence projects. I know some people struggle with that, but That's a technology that is coming at us significantly, and any government that is not ready, in about 12, 18 months, people will start asking questions as to where you are. And some of those things can go into the way we use hardware as well. We've also funded, more recently, demonstration projects, which are meant to use hardware, things like UAVs and all of that, in agriculture. Because agriculture is something that is, again, quite important for this government. And you can look at what the president has done since being in office. He's set aside funding for manufacturing sector. That's just to tell you that this government is aware that we need to exactly do what you were trying to explain, right? So government has set aside funding for agriculture. Government has set aside, for manufacturing, but also for agriculture as well, because we understand that if we don't back the businesses that needs to build what we need to see, we're not going to get it. But the challenge we have is how quickly can we leverage the policy and the funding that the government is putting there. And that's what I was alluding to in our chat. Those programs are there. If you look at the economic crisis, if you break down our economy, you see that the current challenge we have, we're plugged to the global economy, so we can't say it doesn't have effect on us. If you're following the data, it does. But in trying to balance that challenge, especially on the financial side, there's also the bit where we start to look at our people. You can largely classify our people into three. When you look at economic activities, the underemployed, the people who are not employed, and those who are gainfully employed. And the way this crisis is affecting them is in different manner. But if you take down the policies and the funding programs that the president has launched since being in office, you will see intention that is speaking to each group. But the challenge is, how do we quickly accelerate the implementation of what the president as a leader has put on the table? And that's where we need the media as well. It's okay to read the headlines. These are the reality. Nobody is denying that we have the pain. But we all need to say there's an urgency. It's not business as usual. The president, with his good intention, has put together this program, put together the funding. What can we do? I'll give an example. I'm coming from the innovation space. In an ideal situation, removing fuel subsidy should mean that Nigeria is quickly accelerating and we're becoming a nation for green energy. We should be seeing acceleration programs, startups that are building, supporting significant opportunity, which by doing so, we're creating more jobs, we're becoming effective, we're supporting our economy. Those are the things we need to be talking about. What can we do to quickly accelerate those things?
We're still going to talk about that, the AI infrastructure soon, but since you, in passing, mentioned the public sector, and I said that you're making a case for digital public infrastructure in one of your documents where you talk about transforming them, and we know that it is hugely important to get that sector up and running. So if they're that nimble, we know it will translate to every other part of the country. So talk to us about what you intend to do and where you are at the moment with that project.
Again, we're feeding off the energy from the president on this one. He's done significant work in Lagos. Lagos was the first state to actually digitalize in Nigeria. And that's one thing he says he wants to do. You cannot transform public services if you're not using technology, because it has to be nimble, it has to be efficient. And one of the few ways to do that is through the use of technology. So the agenda we've set for ourselves is to ensure that, and Nigerian government has always been using technology, but what we've seen is that it's been in silos. No, it's been in silos. So when you look at identity, there's a law we've done with NIMSI, as painful as NIN, for instance, as painful as it may be. The interbank settlement system in Nigeria is one of the best in the world. NIBS is one of the best in the world. Government uses TSA, the single account system for managing payments. These things are there, but what we've seen when we came into office is that because they are in silos, they don't give advantage to us.
Yeah, you know, I heard the former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, also talk about this. Yeah. The fact that, you know, government was using technology, but they were in silos, and there was no interconnectivity amongst government offices. Yeah. And he did say that was something that administration was working on. So I'm wondering if they were working on something, you met nothing?
No, there's been conversation around interoperability. You can see what Galaxy Backbone is doing. But we are just building what is called the digital public infrastructure. And the focus of the digital public infrastructure is actually to take the gains. Well, you can't say we meant nothing.
I'm asking.
NIN, for instance, came from that office. And you cannot do technology in government without digital ID, because you need a single system for being able to identify every citizen. And the last minister did a fantastic job with that. It was a painful exercise, but it was done. 90% of adults are now registered. Payment is already done.
90% of adults?
Yeah, 90%.
We know that for a fact?
Yes, NIMSI will tell you that. But they're still adults, yeah? But there's still young people and so many other people that are not registered.
That's not saying if we have 90%, maybe we don't need a census.
No, so that's where it's going. If you use technology well, you actually don't need a census. Developed countries don't do census all the time. Once you can ID everybody, and also if you follow, again, this is what I keep saying, 2 or 3 weeks ago, the government and the National Population, the President and the National Population Commission launched a new system for registering birth, death, and marriages and things like that. That's a digital system. If you have that in place, you have your NIN in place, you won't need censor eventually. So what we are doing at the minute is bringing everything that is in silo together and creating what we call the data public infrastructure, which is built on the Nigerian stack. And the Nigerian stack simply means that every government agency will be able to exchange data. Ministry of Education can pull data easily without needing to go to MPC or National Population Commission dataset, right? Ministry of Health can pull data from Ministry of Education without needing to go talk to anyone. The Statistics Office can pull data on every ministry without speaking to anyone. If you follow my activity, this is what we've been driving. And to be able to get there, it's a journey. It's more of a people issue than technology issue. That's why we started what we call the Devs in Government, which is a learning group of every technologies in government. We started that just a few weeks ago. And this group meets every week. Because without them, we can't achieve what we want to achieve. Last week, I was in Abeokuta on a retreat with all the ICT directors within the federal government, just talking about this DPI thing. To ensure that we also get it, it's not about building the technology. Today, we've just announced a program where we're connecting all local government secretariats in Nigeria. And we're starting the pilot. Because a lot of these secretariats don't have connectivity. So if we digitize government services, they're the closest to the people. If they don't have access to the internet, we will struggle. So all these things are happening, but when we can pull them together, when we can analyze them carefully, we can begin to see how they will impact on our economy.
I mean, we see some of the targets for the 774 local governments, but before we come to that, I'm just wondering, because, I mean, what we say consistently on this program is we can't afford to play politics with data.
Absolutely.
We're looking at a scenario wherein probably Ministry of Food, it could be transport, it could be works, it could be anything. They need data because if government has a particular program, they don't plan for the right number of people, the other people who are left out as a result of maybe inadvertently or so, there could be crisis as a result of that.
Absolutely.
So what is the current scenario now? Are you getting the kind of support and encouragement? Are all those ministries cooperating? Is it going smoothly? Can they, and at what point, perhaps, can they say, look, we need data for this program that we're working on. We get to this agency, we get the data, and smooth.
The support that we're getting is incredible. And I think it's also because we're being human about the way we're developing this. I'm coming from the private sector, so I'm not a minister that will just give directive and say, go get things done. If you don't explain why things need to be done, people are not going to support it. And it's been uplifting to actually see, like the way you've described this, it's the same way each and every person we're interacting with is describing the value of data and interoperability in government. People know why it is important. I sat there and I met someone from the Statistics Office that was telling me that for them to be able to give out facts on the economy, they source their data from 3 sources, and one of the sources is administrative statistics, which they have to collect from all the ministry. Imagine that not being automated. Just imagine the process of emailing people, going into one ministry or the other to collect that data. When she explained that in a gathering with other government officials, people could see why interoperability is important, why we must do digital public infrastructure. So as leaders, we have to be able to explain things to people. When we explain to people are good people. People talk down on civil servants a lot. That's my experience. It's not been my experience because I engage. I let people see why we're doing things. I carry people along. When I go into meetings, we're at a retreat in Abeokuta. I sat through the entire retreat and everybody was looking at me like, why are you sitting? Ministers give their talks and they go continue with the business. But for me, I understand that if we all come together and have a clear understanding of why we need to do DPI, we will change lives to what you were explaining.
Do you interface with INEC?
Not at the minute, but I see that eventually also coming as well.
Yeah, because one area too is people want to be sure that, look, there's no point of us wasting millions, billions, trillions on printing permanent voter cards, printing this. When everybody is gotten in, everybody has that data on us. So let's just streamline, go there so people know that what they see is what they get, because we know if we get that leadership recruitment process right, I mean, that can be a very huge springboard. So we're looking in the next 4 years, INEC should be on board of this.
Again, I would say we're lucky to have the president that we have, in my own opinion, because it's someone who is extremely bullish about technology. What you're describing, the ability to harmonize and integrate technology, there's so many prerequisites that you need to get right. Things like connectivity, for instance. If you don't have ubiquitous access to broadband across the country, there's always going to be limitation. If you've seen what we've been putting out, this is an agenda. I've been spending time on day mobilizing partnership resources to ensure that we can achieve our objective to lay fiber optic cable across Nigeria. And we're not just doing it for Nigeria. We're building an ecosystem that can do that work, such that Nigeria will become even an expert country when it comes into how you lay fiber optic cable. And we can also begin to export that services to neighboring African countries as well. This is how we can strengthen our economy. And the president is for that. Is supporting every move, every investment that we need to do to strengthen the digital economy. The digital economy is no longer just another sector, just another economy. It's the foundation of any nation that wants to be successful.
Yeah, so today, Project 774 LG Connectivity has been launched.
Absolutely.
All right. Ayo, go ahead.
I'm actually very much interested in that one, Chamberlain. And Honorable Minister, thank you for all that you're doing. But that which Chamberlain just talked about, Project 774. You told Maokwe in response to her questions about collaboration. I'm very much interested in that. So in interfacing with the state governments, for this Project 774, exactly what is it and how is it working? Are you directly interfacing with local government chairmen, or the states are the one mediating for you? What exactly is this Project 774 about?
I'm excited that you're interested in it because that's really what I'm hoping that both the media, but also civil society organization, and even the private sector should do. What it is simple. This is the closest part of government to our people, right? If we want government to be efficient in the delivery of public services, we must empower the secretariat, the local government secretariats. We must give them the opportunity to be connected to the entire system. So what this is, of course, we're working with the state government. We're working through the state governor's office because we're going to do this in batches over the next 6 months, right? To select for a start those locations that are excluded. So there are locations where we can't get internet through fiber optic cable. So we have to use satellite. And Nigeria is the only country in West Africa with a satellite, and that satellite has the capability to be able to deploy internet services to remote locations within Nigeria. And we have a fantastic lady that is now leading NIGECOMSAT, which is the agency that is responsible. So what we're doing is selecting those locations, empowering them, ensuring that they're connected, and you see a lot of them coming online in the coming weeks because, again, like we mentioned in the document, we are creating new jobs for people that will actually go and install the satellite. We estimated about 300 jobs will be created, and these folks will work on the deployment over the next month. But we also continue to use them for subsequent deployments as well. Why is this important? Many people don't pay attention to the fact that for you to do birth registration, stillbirth, marriages, there's a ton. We've released a document of a ton of services that local government secretariats are responsible for. If those services are not connected, there's absolutely no way they are integrated into the state system real time. If they're not integrated into the state system real time, they're not integrated into the federal system real time. If they're not, there's absolutely no way the president can have a super solid understanding of what is going on across the country real time. And if we don't, we cannot deploy our resources appropriately, which is why we should all pick interest. If we connect a local government secretariat, how do we ensure that they actually deploy and use the resources that we're putting in there? Do we need civil society organizations to support in training them? NIDA will be doing part of that, where we're also deploying digital literacy in this location. But so many other parts of the economy and our society can also participate in ensuring that the connectivity is there. How do we ensure that those locations can now become hubs for economic activities that can connect not just the civil servants situated there, but also the citizens around those locations to our economy at large?
The infrastructure is one. Capability to use is another. Speak to, for instance, primary health care. How will this help in the delivery of healthcare services to the people in those areas? In the light of something that's contained in one of your documents, that some communities, some states are not as commercially viable. Give us the correlation as well as the sustainability plan.
No, so the reality is that connectivity is a universal right now, and globally you see that nations have what we call the Universal Service Provision, almost hacked in a way, that says you shouldn't limit connectivity to those who are in vibrant cities or states. It's something that everyone who is a Nigerian, for instance, in our case, must be able to access, is their right. And the way we're looking at it is, of course, there are balances. You have the USPF, which is a fund under NCC. Most countries have their Universal Service Provision Fund, for instance. Part of that fund is what we're going to be using to deploy. We need to start to see connectivity as not something that people just need to pay for. We need to start to see it as the way you see your roads, right, or your hospitals, the critical infrastructure that you need for any economy to thrive. On the issue of healthcare facilities and connecting them, that you're actually taking me along the line of a new project that we've not yet announced. But along the line, we're working with the Ministry of Health to also launch the exact program where we're looking for the right business model to ensure we can actually provide connectivity to all healthcare facilities in Nigeria. And that's something, again, we're going to be launching before the end of this year, probably sometimes in the middle of the year. We'll look at the business model. How do we pay? Where do we get the funding from? The luck that we have as a nation is also that the government is investing in some of this infrastructure. I mentioned earlier that Nigeria is the only country in West Africa with a satellite. We have a company, for instance, that is owned by the government that is called the Galaxy Backbone, which has fiber network. It's owned by the government, and that fiber network can be used to provide internet. So where you find that it is not economically viable for private companies to provide this connectivity, government infrastructure will be used, because the role of government is also to provide that infrastructure that can allow other services to be built on it. So it's not charity in a way, it's ensuring that if our healthcare facilities are connected, there's clear medical health record, which can be used across the nation, which means it's also going to reduce the cost of providing health services as well. So it's balancing it out, and that's the way we're looking at the sustainability of programs like this.
You know, Dr. Tijani, something you said in response to one of Chamberlain's questions, you talked about exchange of data across board. Is it a problem of exchanging data or harmonizing data? I understand that previously, I don't know whether it was this government or the previous governments, have talked about the need for us to put all of our data in one basket. INEC has data, banks have data, vehicle inspection has data, FRSC has data. They're just, as you said, in silos here and there. Is there a need or a difficulty in putting everything together in one spot, governed and secure, so that, you know, we don't have this multiplicity of data spread all over the place? And then, as you said, maybe we may not need to spend billions on census.
No, so harmonization is quite an old way of looking at data. If you look at the value of data and the fact that data is always constantly evolving. The concept of data today is not just about what you do with it now, but your ability to reuse it as well. So to what you're speaking to, there will be the need for us to, if we think harmonizing and having a central place for storing it. But I think the most important thing is actually using application interfaces to be able to call data from wherever they are. Of course, government has standards in place for what you do with data. Nigeria now has a Data Protection Commission, which is just a year old. And that commission is working actively to ensure we can standardize the use of data. In fact, they're beginning to find companies that are not following the prescribed way of managing people's data in Nigeria. People don't know this yet. But this is something that is already happening in countries. So most of the big companies, like the banks, are already used to the fact that they need to follow certain procedure because data is extremely important. So the harmonization in itself is already happening. But the biggest part is exchange, right? Because people will use and reuse data for so many reasons to make sense out of how to govern society, how to run programs. And if we can create an exchange system, a data exchange system, which means regardless of where you find yourself, you can find data on a critical part of the economy that is important for the program you're building, then it makes your work a lot easier because you can dimension things better. You can understand how to deploy your resources better. So that's how we're going about it. Now, the harmonization itself will happen where people need to store in certain places because you may not be able to force that everyone should store in a single location. But if it's not in a single location, that there's a system in place that allow anybody that needs to call any data set to call them seamlessly when needed.
Yeah, the question then would be why not? But hey, maybe there will be reasons that you may not be able to say because people will always reference other parts of the world.
There's no reason. Sorry for barging in. Sorry for barging in. And this is what I was saying. There's no reason. There's no reason. I'm a minister and I'm putting myself on the spot. This government has made it clear. It's in my blueprint. We release documents on this every day. Follow the work. Whenever I come back here, ask me this question. Where are we headed with it? I don't think we need to always be cynical that things cannot work in this country because it's not the truth.
No, I get that. I get that point.
But we have to be topical about our conversations.
Understandably, the reason I ask is, Chamberlain also asked you about NIN. If we have NIN, you should be able to call up any data anywhere in the country. Well, perhaps some other time. There's this one that I have to ask you, and that is about the engagement of government with young people. Marco asked you the other time about the realities that we are contending with right now. Rising cost of living for so many people across the country, which is already seeing some kinds of, unrest here and there, in the country. And that warning from the AFDB. Engaging with the people will perhaps help to stave up some of this tension, calm some nerves. Some of the initiatives that you're talking about now, a number of people will be wondering, I don't even know about them. You're engaging with states. States are not telling their people, for instance, that these things are happening. How do we engage? How should we engage the people? You are a federal minister, so your job is not just to your ministry, it's across boards one way or the other. So how do we engage people so as to calm nerves and reduce tension in the country?
So I think our nation is at a critical time, and what I would like to say to that comment is, right now in the world, the largest talent accelerator is 3MTT, and anybody can challenge that notion. In less than 2 months of putting that program out, 1.8 million Nigerians applied for it. The 1.8 million Nigerians that applied for this program are from every single local government in Nigeria, every single local government. I can make that data set available if people need it. Those people are being thoroughly engaged. And if any one of them is watching, I'm challenging them that they also need to speak out about what they're saying, what they're enjoying. We have local training centers across this country engaging those people. I think there are times where we use whole narratives to distort what people hear. And these things are important to the mood in the nation. The programs that we're running under FMCID. For instance, 2 weeks ago, immediately after the new year, we were engaging in embedded system. You talked about hardware. We had 1,500 kids building embedded system. It's the largest in the world where Raspberry Pi was being used. This is a fact that can be checked. Raspberry Pi is not a Nigerian company. They manufacture the kits. The largest in the world, 1,500 in 3 states. 50 schools in each state participating. We gathered these folks for a full week. Some of them, when I saw some of these kids, some of them are even on Twitter, even though I was worried as a secondary school kid, what are you doing there? But they're there. And I saw their comments, and I was extremely encouraged and impressed. We are engaging. We've launched a program for girls that is now out, that people are engaging. The artificial intelligence program that we launched, a lot of people will say Nigeria is not ready. We got over 3,000 applications from Nigerians who are working in AI within Nigeria, not outside of Nigeria.
So I think the only follow-up I have to that, were those government schools or were those private institutions, the ones that participated in the...
Government.
But there were government schools.
All government schools.
So,
public schools.
Would you say that more public schools are getting more and more into technology and the need to incorporate it?
Absolutely. When I came in, I did the map and I released it. Government, not just this government, has been investing in computer centers in our schools for years. You know what is missing? There's a need for us to keep upskilling the teachers so that they can put it to good use, right? That's what is missing. Some of them even have solar panel to support their use of alternative energy source, just so that the labs can keep going. In some of them, the Parent Teachers Association are supporting them. We need the civil society organizations to also work with us on this. Engage some of those schools, build the capacity. There's significant things being done. We will continue to see more. I'm very hopeful. When I came into office, I started releasing weekly report of my activities. Weekly report of my activities. We share it on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. We have a WhatsApp channel. You know, I go to places constantly traveling around, engaging. We engage.
Let's wind down with this AI component.
Yeah.
Government agencies will need your help on that one.
Absolutely.
I know that the National Assembly are talking about amending the Constitution, also paying attention to AI. NAFDAC, I think they also will need to step up a little bit because products, several people online, they're cloning things, putting people's voices, regulatory agencies can't seem to catch up. So what is your thinking about AI infrastructure in the country?
I think, obviously, this is not unique to Nigeria. I think artificial intelligence has moved and developed so quickly. Till today, you still have people. After this interview, there will be people on Twitter that will say, you know, this is a fancy toy that Bosun is playing with. That's why he's talking about AI, that it's useless, we shouldn't be talking about. And that was what happened. Many countries looked away from it because we thought it's something for the really developed world until ChatGPT came last year. Most people couldn't relate with AI. But when ChatGPT came, it became something that was realistic. But I'll break it down. The simple explanation of artificial intelligence is that we've been able to figure, the technology ecosystem has been able to figure out how to teach machines to think like human. People should just understand that. So right now, for those who use internet, you're coming into the era of a few technologies that will help you think. ChatGPT is already doing that. They will think for you. They will nudge you in the direction of how you think. So now imagine if that technology is not inclusive. Because the way it's done is that they use what we know to train machines. So imagine if what we know in Nigeria, what we know in Africa, if your language is not being used to train the machine, imagine we wake up in 5 years' time, ChatGPT is already mainstream. It's going to be another level of racism where technology doesn't understand our reality. And it's the responsibility of government to ensure that we can catch up. While some people may be fickle about it, they may not be able to see how this impact. We can't only always focus on solving wicked problems, you know, those immediate problems of poverty. We have to address those things, they're important. But we have to also project into understanding that if you leave things that will happen in 2 years, by the time you think you're done solving poverty issues, in 2 years' time, you have another level of poverty that because you've not projected into what is happening in the future. So since I came into office, Nigeria is now a big, big player in this space. There's absolutely no major event in the world that I'm not being invited to. I'm having to choose because I can't be everywhere. We're getting support. We're also creating a number of things. End of March, we're bringing together 200 people from all over the world, most of them of Nigerian descent, who are working at the highest level of artificial intelligence, to help us come up with a strategy on what we should be doing with our little resources. How should we be approaching AI? So this is not something I'm sitting in my office to determine. And we're getting support for that. We're not even spending government money to do that. You know, we're getting support to do that. We want, and lastly on AI, what we need to know is that if you follow the development, all the developed countries in the world are desperate to ensure that they can build artificial intelligence to support their economy. They cannot build it because their population is aging. They need workforce. So we have the workforce. So if we don't participate in it, even if it's just to train our people to be able to take in that opportunity, we're missing out. Right. So this is why we're very serious about artificial intelligence in this government.
All right. We do thank you for coming on. Dr. Bosun Tijani is the Minister of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy. All the best to you and your team.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, it's going to be time. It is time for business, actually. And I understand, Mark, what tells me you knew something about this subsidy that you didn't tell us.
wish I did, Chamberlain and Malpe. I really wish I did, because I know I would have edged against it. But as you read in one of the newspapers earlier, 1 trillion naira for subsidy, and now maybe more than it was before President Tinubu. A worrying situation, obviously, for everyone. Well, let's get right into it in just a moment. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And yes, subsidy is top on the mind of everybody right here in Nigeria. We know that NATO has threatened that from today. There'll be a shutdown. We'll get updates on that. And we know how it would affect you and I getting on the road, on transport and all of that. But first of all, let's start from the global space now. Oil prices fell as investor attention returned to demand output after reports of higher producer prices in the United States, which is the world's biggest oil user, stoked worries that sticky inflation and higher interest rate again in 2024 would lift fuel consumption growth. Let's look at the numbers for this morning. We see that Brent, which is Nigeria's own, this is what Nigeria deals in mostly, is down 0.7%. That's for Brent, and WTI from the United States, $78.78 a barrel, and that's down 0.5%. The WTI April contract was down 0.8% at $77.86, and both Brent and WTI contracts had settled high on Friday as geopolitical tensions in the Middle East offset slowing demand forecast from the International Energy Agency. U.S. producer prices increased more than expected. Remember that inflation number that came out amid strong gains on the cost of services. Markets are also yet to see the direction of demand from China. That's a major also for the oil and gas after that country returned from a week-long Lunar New Year holiday, while President's Day in the United States is set to keep trade relatively muted. Moreover, Federal Reserve policymakers on Friday signaled patience towards interest rate cuts. Higher rates keep up the cost of buying oil, providing for a bearish market trend. Over the weekend, tension in the Middle East also hasn't stopped, continued as Israeli raids put the Gaza Strip's second largest hospital out of service. And Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthi fighters claim responsibility for an attack on an India-bound oil tanker. There you go, a major one there pushing the price of oil. Now, in Nigeria, we know that today NATO said they were going to down-tool tankers that are supposed to convey oil, petrol, diesel from one location to the other. They have said that this will not happen. Now, the federal government has ordered oil marketers to negotiate with the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners to avert that planned suspension of operation by NATO members with respect to the lifting of petroleum products nationwide. Reports say that oil marketers and the executive of NATO met about 6 times in the last 2 days. Weekend was very busy for them, declaration of petroleum products transport to halt operations. Well, there are also feelers that the federal government, through the downstream regulator and petroleum ministry, would meet with NATO members as well as other parties in Abuja to sort this out. This has not been confirmed yet, but these are some of the efforts that we're hearing. And the crux of the matter here is operational costs in the industry. According to NATO, they say that they can no longer keep up with the surge in the price of diesel. Now, let's find out the state of what's going on right now and probably confirm some of those stories with Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry. He's the president, Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria. Dr. Harry, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigeria.
Well, not a very pleasant time for us now. And now we're having that to be, compounding all of that with NATO's threat. What's the situation now? Are the tankers on the road? They started the strike. Are there meetings? We hear they're supposed to meet with the downstream office also. What's going on from your perspective?
Well, I have, in my capacity as national president of the Retail Outlet Owners, I've been endeavoring to reach the president of NATO to know exactly where we're headed to. He's been involved in several meetings, I believe, with the major Energies Marketers Association and the government. so far, there's
Hello, Dr. Harry. Hello? Well, I don't know. Dr. Harry, well, we cannot hear you. You're breaking up. Dr. Harry, can you hear me? We cannot make out your statement, unfortunately, because it's breaking up, but it would really be nice to have Dr. Harry tell us what's going on right there. While we try to sort that out, let's get to Kano State. Well, it's a matter of high cost of living. That is the story in Nigeria now. Whichever way you want to turn, whichever way you want to look at, be it in the petroleum sector, in the food, and all of that. Let's see what our correspondent in Kano, let's see what she put together. She went out to the street to get the perspective and experience of some residents in Kano State. We'll be back, and hopefully we'll have Dr. Harry by then.
The current economic hardship in the country has continued to be on the rise in the last few months. This has become a thing of great concern. In Kano State, the story is not different, as the effects can be seen in businesses, households, and every aspect of the people's lives. Kano Commercial City, as it is known, is also facing serious setbacks as a result of this economic turbulence. Some residents share their experiences and plights.
The economy is worst because a common man cannot eat. Cannot eat. Your salary is not enough. We pensioners, we have nothing to go about. So even the promise that they will give 25%, up to now they have not done it. We have not received any cover. A mudu of local rice is 3,600. 4,000 a mudu.
I want the federal government to, number one, if they can open border for us. Number two, this promise they made that they are going to send about 42 tons of grains. They will release tons of grains into the country. And actually, to me, my own idea is they should not give it out as palliative, but they should just send it to the market and reduce prices for us.
The economy, as I can see, or as far as I'm concerned, is really telling on every individual. And I think the best way the government can help us is to bring down the prices of goods. Things are too expensive. The salary you were earning 5 years ago is still what you're still earning. And the prices of things, they've all gone up, at least by 300%, if I may say.
Nigerians are hoping and praying that the federal government quickly comes up with solutions to ease their sufferings. From Kano Commercial City, Nanchin Vincent, Channels Television News.
Well, I guess it doesn't. The picture is not looking good anywhere in Nigeria at this time. Well, not just in Nigeria, but let's face our country, for crying out loud. We do have the resources. How do we use it to make things better? Let's see if we can connect with Dr. Harry now, if his audio is okay. Now, Dr. Harry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Great. So you were saying before we had that interruption about your efforts to speak with the president of NATO and what's coming out of that.
Well, so far, I was expecting to get feedback from him. I didn't get that, but as far as Petron knows, NATO has a justifiable reason to have served the notice. The only concern we have is that we do not want to add more difficulty already overburdened Nigerians in different ways, different climes. So I'm hoping that something positive will come out of that discussion, and at least there will be some reprieve to get back to work and to call back that notice.
What kind of reprieve do you see that could, I mean, you agree with them that, I mean, when we look at the price of diesel, which is the top number one on their list, what kind of reprieve do you see coming? Because already we're talking of subsidy, and we do have subsidy according to World Bank, and from calculations,
There's already subsidy in existence. So where does the reprieve come from at this time?
Well, the reality is that diesel prices are high. Yes, that is true. But much more than diesel prices is the cost of maintaining trucks. Maintaining cost, even just the vehicles you use, the cost of maintaining them are getting out of, over the roof. So what NATO is complaining about is correct. How much are you going to pay? Are you going to pay your drivers pitons, and then are you going to use substandard materials to repair your vehicles? That will even give more difficulty to the situation where you expect a product to leave Port Harcourt and arrive at Abuja maybe in 3 days, and then it takes about 2 weeks because of bad parts, that you have used to maintain your vehicle. And these are getting so expensive every day. So yes, there is a general reason why that concern should be addressed. But we need to move as fast as possible to give Nigerians a peace of mind and be able to go about their businesses to grow even the economy. So that's why we will support them.
Okay, but what kind of succor do you see at this time for NATO, especially because they are the ones in focus, at least at this time? Where should it come from? What should it look like?
Well, it simply should come because they are being paid. They are being paid by the government. Government kind of pays them some money to be able to compute that distance that they cover. Even though we retail outlet owners and marketers also pay for the services, but that payment from government augments that and gives them much more credit and much more confidence to be on the road. So what I expect is that NMDPRO and the Federal Ministry of Petroleum, Oil and Gas, and then also the presidency should have a very robust discussion. It's not just a concern of major energy marketers only. It actually concerns the regulatory agencies and all the marketers. And we all can sit down and discuss. This also should take into consideration some of the extraordinary levies that are being levied on marketers, such as the kind of amount of money we pay to the NUPENG, which is, completely unacceptable to us. We cannot be paying so much money that translates to over 4 naira a liter, and then we will go to the market to sell at prices that become difficult for us to explain to our patrons. So there's quite a number of things that need to be discussed, and we should be able to get to those points, in no distant time.
All right, we certainly hope that we can get to that point. Dr. Billy, thank you so much. Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry is the president, Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria. I'll be following up, of course, this conversation, and we'll reach out to you later on today to get updates, because I know you'll be in touch with all of that, being a stakeholder. All right, now, well, I guess we cannot say a whole lot outside the high cost of living. Now joining us to perhaps tell us if there's an ICT solution. They're saying everything that looks like a problem, there always is an opportunity. Well, joining us now to discuss perhaps the opportunities that may be available, which we haven't seen, or some of us have seen, the Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems Limited, Dr. Yele Okeremi, joins us in the studio now. I don't know, good morning, Dr. Okeremi. I don't know how much of the hits you are getting, NATO, diesel, food, staple food at this time. It seems, I think somebody said it's the worst since 1999, but you've lived longer than me. Maybe you tell me a better date.
No, well, of course. I mean, true, if you look at it now from 1999, it's true. But again, there's a way the Yoruba people say this, that if we say we haven't seen this before, we are only scaring people. So once again, I mean, this has happened before in Nigeria, and where we have had high escalating costs. and why we have had serious depreciation of wealth of Nigerians in the foreign exchange market. I remember that in the 80s, just when the second-tier foreign exchange market was announced, the Naira was trading close to about 1 to 1 or the other, but actually at a point it was $1 was about 60-something kobo, then 75 kobo, and then it went to 4 Naira. So if you had $1 million Naira at that time, you had an equivalent of $1 million, and then just overnight you realize that you had only $250,000. So if what we are talking about, what we are seeing today, is like what I would call the traditional Phillips curve of the boom and the doom. So when we talk about what we call jackpot today, it didn't start today. Remember when I was old enough, I was getting to in the university already, and then you remember Andrew, I'm checking out. So these are the things, these things have happened before. The question is that what were the triggers at that time? How were those challenges dealt with at that time? What are the triggers at this time? Because, to be honest with you, sometimes history would be a very good pointer to the solutions that you may need to do. But I think much more than history, you need knowledge. And the knowledge of these times that you live currently in. These are extremely challenging times. Because, I mean, one of the things I said, I don't think any reasonable person wants to be in government at this time. This is the worst.
For those who are already in government cannot run away from it.
Actually,
they're saddled with the responsibility.
They have my highest sympathy.
I think I saw the central bank governor say somewhere that he has the most difficult job on earth at this time.
I sympathize with him, honestly, because it's extremely difficult, because every human being wants to get results. And sometimes people want to get results at all costs. But when you are saddled with a situation where invariably you may get results, but again, people are impatient. Remember, you are dealing with human beings, and human beings are going to contribute to the process of resolving these challenges. Then this
and AI too. I mean, we just had the Minister of ICT, Dr. Bosun, just before you came on Sunrise.
Absolutely.
And he was talking about some of the work the administration is doing. Now, you are very vast in ICT. So perhaps there are some opportunities at this time. You know, I remember when COVID came, everybody was shouting, but today we live with some of the benefits of COVID.
Absolutely.
We do virtual, we just had a virtual.
Absolutely.
We didn't do that before COVID. So perhaps there are some things we could also leverage at this time.
Absolutely. But the challenge is what we call time lag. So, you know, one of the things people do not understand about economics and economic theories is when we talk about supply, demand, and all these things, what we do not understand is that challenge of time lag. For example, when we say the demand, the equilibrium price today is it's a function of demand and supply. Okay, fine, the supply curve, you want your supply curve to shift to the right. But the bottom line is that these things are not going to happen because you decree it. They are going to happen because there needs to be a process. They are going to happen because you have positioned yourselves ready. So what you are producing today is a function of policies you took in the yesteryears. Now, when you find yourself in the hole today, and you are trying to put up policies today, those policies are not going to yield the fruits that you are looking for today, unfortunately. Perhaps if the policies are good enough, they could yield some results in the future. But let's talk about those areas that I think there are opportunities. But again, I will warn you that the opportunities we are talking about and the results we are going to be looking at are not going to be instantaneous. And that's the biggest challenge. It's frustrating. Because, I mean, people are feeling hot. People are feeling hungry. People are feeling frustrated. And they want to be able to eat today, not wait for some policy, but unfortunately there's no quick fix. So you talk about the fact that we can use technology to do a whole lot of things, and that's absolutely true. So let's take a look at what we do in Nigeria. And one of the things I have said, I think I said it in this studio before I took my sabbatical, that I was going off television for a while. And I said one thing, that when we look at what we are thriving in as a country, we have been wasting our time and we've been fooling ourselves. When we talk about celebrating achievements, and these achievements are good, I'm not saying they are not good. We say fintech, Nigeria is a hub for investment. No, that's a waste of time. If you really wanted to have something kinetic in Nigeria, we needed to look at what our lifestyles, what has been around. If you take a look at this society, in Nigeria today, the biggest thing right now is oil. The question you need to ask yourself is how much value do Nigerians and Nigeria derive from oil? So talk about it. When I talk about oil technology, how much people are shouting local content? They're just scratching the surface. Take a look at the entire technology process flow. Comes from outside this country. It's a whole lot of money. The question you ask yourself is it actually true that Nigerians or Africans do not have the capacity or the knowledge or the understanding to deliver these things? I don't think that's the situation. But let's assume without considering that that's the situation. Let's take a look at it and flip it the other way. Can't this understanding be acquired by Nigerians? How long would it take Nigerians to acquire these kind of things? And these are conversations that we've been having since the oil boom era. We haven't done anything in that regard, as far as I'm concerned. So what we do, we legislate local content, and we are still importing underwater welders to come and do things in Nigeria. We have the Bonga, which is quite a big offshore project. How much of Nigerians do we have? How much of Nigeria do we have in that? Now, if we are going to recover from this, and if we are ever going to recover permanently and become prosperous, Nigeria needs to begin to think of applying technology in those areas that are relevant to us. So I'm talking about oil and gas, I'm talking about agriculture. So for example, we talk about agriculture, and let's take a look at what's happening today. Before COVID, even people in tech like myself thought certain things were not possible. So in those days, people like me were virtually living in the air, because you have one conference in London today, you have one meeting in America, and then you keep flying all over the world. Sometimes you get very tired, but you keep going. But today, I attend 4 meetings in 4 continents in one day. That's because of the fact that we have used technology. So we're still, again, looking at agriculture in the primitive terms. But if we really deploy technology and, what countries like Israel are doing, using artificial intelligence and dealing with crop-level issues, you realize that the throughput that you can generate agriculturally will be much insufficient to create at least food security in Nigeria. And there's an adage in Yoruba land again, that if you remove hunger from poverty, the poverty is already halfway gone.
But all this sound like things that the government, is there anything that the average Nigerian, the private sector can engage in, can, even start at this time?
So I would say something. I think there's a big challenge between the synergy, the government and the private sector. There's a big gap. And until we have synergy. So what you see smart business people doing is actually finding a means of paying government to get out of the way for them. Whereas what should actually happen is to get government involved and propelling private sector. But one of the challenges I see, and I mean, look, it's not about this government or any, the fact is that government in Nigeria does not yet understand the language of productivity. So when I see government, many government agencies today are turning themselves to regulators, when ordinarily speaking, they should have been enhancement organizations. And we just finished AFCON, for example, and I asked a simple question. Which of the countries that went to participate in AFCON was led by a referee? If you know you want to win AFCON, you get a coach, not a referee, to lead you. So a lot of government agencies want to become referees, telling organizations what you cannot do. No. Where we are now, government agencies really need to roll up their sleeves and come and collaborate with the private sector and not put too many bombs. So that rather than they putting bombs slowing down private sector, what they should do is give the private sector a lot more fuel and create a very fair pathway so that they can go. Now you have asked what I think private sector should do. You say the private sector is doing as much. I personally get to see. I was president of the Institute of Software Practitioners a few years ago, and I know what the potentials are in that industry. But the honest truth is that the biggest challenge I see in the industry is market access. It's not about skill. So I hear government say they are going to train 5 million. You train 10 million people, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be doing crime? No. What I think we should do is let's identify productive organizations. They don't have to be many. Every nation does this. identify some very productive, high-flying organizations, put fuel behind them, give them the kind of support that they need, allow them to grow very well, then use them as role models to create so many organizations. I mean, if you went to the United States today, you go and touch General Motors or General Electric, then you will see the full force of the United States. You go to India and touch Infosys, you will see the full force. Go to China and touch Huawei. Which companies do we do like that for in Nigeria? And in tech, take a look today. Perhaps 20 years ago, perhaps 25 years ago, the richest people were traders, they were miners, they were extracting things naturally. But today, who are the richest people? Who are the richest nations? They are all technology-driven nations. What is the factor of technology-driven nations? It's simple human capital. Nigeria has got it. We need to harness it.
All right, thank you so much. I think those are some deep insight that we have to, let's go and check the data and then, customize it. Even though a lot of these things are not new.
Absolutely.
A lot of our leaders
nothing is new.
Know this exactly. But
absolutely nothing is new.
Implementing it becomes something else.
It's an uphill task because you see, implementing it.
Perhaps it's political will.
It's beyond political will.
Okay.
You need the knowledge, you need the discipline, and you need human beings who in themselves are competent and self-confident.
Right.
Now, if you do not have that kind of a team, it doesn't matter how bright you are, you're going to get frustrated and you're going to burn out.
Wow. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Yelu Keremi, Chief Executive Officer of Precise Financial Systems Limited. Appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure, Edie. Have a
All
good
right,
day. Bye.
Thank you, you too.
Yes.
All right, so now let's head to the market just before it's back to Sunrise team. Looking at it last week, this is a summary of last week. All-share index gained 3.79%. And that's interesting as we've had it before, but we'll make do with this. This is what we have at this time. Equities cap 57.85 trillion naira at the close of trade. Of course, that's for the NGX. Activity was all in red. When we look at the week there, 1.55 billion, value 36.4, and 42,546 deals in 5 trading days. The sectors had a lot of red also. Banking was down. Consumer goods, however, remember Boer Foods did like twice last week, moved the market. So 10.96%, industrial goods down, insurance coming back up right there. Oil and gas are still looking really good. I think another interesting market will be at the FX market for last week. We know what's going on right there. So we see the turnover for that week ended. It was a total week-on-week change of less. We've been talking about that, liquidity in the market, and we know that Fitch has also sent in a warning recently that some of the efforts of the CBN might be detrimental to liquidity in the market. So we see at the close of trade last week, there was more than 56%. FX spot was also down, forwards down, and derivatives also down. So, of course, we're going to follow up this week. By 1 p.m., do join me for Business Incorporated. We'll go into the market and, of course, others very important issues in the country. But it's time for Sunrise Daily to continue. Hi, guys. Back to you.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed. So let's revisit and continue that conversation with Senator Balana Al. He joins us here this morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain and Mopé, and then good morning, viewers.
Yeah, so in a bid to probably get things right in some quarters, the National Assembly say they're going to review the Constitution. So in that, two things. First is the question of having or changing to a parliamentary system of governance. But before that one, let's talk about this debate, seemingly unending debate about multi-level policing. Now, the president, governors had that conversation as to what do we do. So still at that conversation stage, because there are several stages before it actually takes perhaps the kind of shape or is actualized. Now, you're not new to this kind of conversation. You've been in the chambers yourself. What do you think about it? Is this a good way to go or not?
Ordinarily, yes. It's a good way to go. It will go a long way in solving partly the security challenges that we are facing as a nation. But the question again to ask is whether the political class has exhibited that level of discipline and patriotism that will guarantee a fair use of those institutions at state level.
Is that the condition precedent?
Yes,
so
it is.
At the moment, they are what they are, but we have a unitary police system. So do we have a fair police system right now?
You see, this conversation has been going on. It appears a lot of people have not taken time to understand properly what our forefathers wanted for this country. In drafting the 1960 and the 1966 Constitution, they had at the back of their mind to run a government that will be cost-effective for the nation so that we can quickly grasp with the challenges of getting independence newly. Unfortunately, it's not something, again, that I would like to discuss. We ran into where we ran into, to the 1966 school. So when the subsequent constitutions were going to be drafted, those fears were taken into account. For example, the 1966 school, what led to it, whatever it was taken into account. And then our framers of Constitution wanted a very strong, united Nigeria. And therefore, they kept everything on the table to address the fears of every section of this country. And that was why I have said, in the House of Representatives, those seats came about based on what they require, what they put as population and landmass. The idea was, as at the time of independence, the southern part of this country were far advanced educationally than the northern part of the country. And there was the need to bring the two to catch up for the purpose of developing a very strong, united Nigeria. And therefore, resources were to be allocated up north to take care of those challenges as quickly as possible so that a very strong, united Nigeria can be built based on that pedestal.
So
that was the idea.
Okay. Well, what do you say to those who think that right there can be described as a huge chunk of the challenge we face in this country? Because if they interpret a strong, a united Nigeria as though everybody must develop at the same pace, isn't that erroneous?
No, it wasn't that we must develop at the same pace. That was why I used the word for the North to catch up. That was the thinking, that the North could utilize those resources, put them into use, ensure that they were, inching towards leveling with the South, so that the contribution of every section of this country will be almost equal in developing the Nigeria that they wanted, our forefathers. Let me tell you, there has been a lot of conversation, and at times I sit down and I laugh that the 1999 Constitution is not a people's constitution. That is bereft of people who don't know how constitutions come about. You see, The military, when they wanted to hand over power to civilians, they took into account what were the wishes of our forefathers. They wanted a strong Nigeria. You see, so they said, okay, fine, go and put up a constitution where every section of this country is adequately protected. And that is how we came about 360 members of the House of Representatives. That's how we came about it. Now, after doing that, they came to the conclusion that more than 67% of this population of 360 people are from the North. And democracy being a recurrent suspicion whereby more than half the people must be right more than half the time. If any decision is to be taken on the floor of the House of Representatives, if these 67 are to come together and unite, then they will continue to overrun the southern part of the country. And they felt that was not the kind of thing that we wanted. That was how the idea of Senate came about, to build a federation where recognition is given to the fact that in as much as people want to be together in certain things, they equally want to be separate in certain things based on our cultural values. And these cultural values, again, have been re-evaluated based on the principle of cultural relativity and cultural universality. So what was it that universally brought the entire country together? On that, we agreed. What was it that kept us separate? Then we said, okay, how do we address that? Build states, so that at state level, those issues can be taken care of. And even inside the state, in recognition of the fact that we are a multi-religious, multilingual country, we can find in one local government, in one state, maybe more than 4, 5, 7 tribes. They say, okay, try to build local governments so that the federating units will responsibly perform their functions at that level, and then give their own contribution to the federal.
We hear you, Senator, but at the same time, we still do not have that kind of Nigeria that you speak about, because some regions have more states than all the others.
Yes.
So, and Nigeria hasn't broken up. So are you then saying that if some groups say they don't want this multi-level policing, which they call state police,
yes,
because some don't want it, that means others cannot have it?
No, that is not equally right democratically. Like I told you, when we talk about democracy, is the ability to give to everyone what he or she wishes to have based on his own strength. It will be very, very uncharitable, for example, for one section of the country to say we will not allow state police in another state where they are desirous of developing that based on their peculiarity. You understand? Like I have said, the most unfortunate thing is that we play politics with everything in this country. And that politics has succeeded in taking away some of the best brains that will have come together to take this country out of its present situation.
Okay. Pardon me to jump in again, but will there be anything wrong if the National Assembly looks at all of this and says, okay, you know what, we'll amend the laws. Whichever state feel they can fund state police, go ahead and have it.
That's the right thing to do. So that at each level of establishment of this state police, every state will determine when it feels it needs it and then establish it. For example, you can decide to say, look, I'm not interested. I will only rely on the federal police. But you cannot do that. The idea that state police is necessary is already on the table. And I will tell you why. Why are we having Omoteku or whatever? Why are we having the other one in Borno?
Almost every state has
and Banga and
security agencies.
And that has further complicated our security architecture. And that has further put us into security problems too in the country. I am not an advocate of bringing up groups of people who have no constitutional or legal authority to continue to bear arms and parade themselves in the public. I'm not that kind of person that will support that kind of thing. And no civilized society will allow that kind of thing. But we have seen them exist. And so at times, to our astonishment, yes, and to our astonishment, they are even being promoted by governors.
I am just a little curious. So what precisely is your stance right now? You've been a part of the National Assembly for years.
Yes.
And we've seen how this debate has gone. So what is your personal stance right now?
My personal stand is that whichever state that is desirous of establishing a state police and they have resources to establish it and give it legal backing to exist should be allowed to do so. I hope I'm clear enough.
Yeah, so in other words, the National Assembly should be making the moves and amending the Constitution in that direction.
They should what?
They should be amending the Constitution in that direction.
Yeah, but again, it's going to be subject to public hearing. So, again, public hearing, like I've said, will override
famous public hearing.
It's interesting that you add that caveat, because what we had received before was that the sentiment of the public was, generally in support of the creation of state police. It was seen that the problem had always been with the National Assembly.
I think I can enter a plea of not guilty on behalf of the National Assembly, and conveniently so.
As a comrade.
Ekweremadu did so much work on this issue when we were in the Senate. And if you remember, I was the one who put the bill on the reform of the Nigerian police before the Senate, on the 9th Senate, which couldn't go through, of course, for some reasons that unfortunately cannot be explained here. But later on, I'm happy that at least it came back to the 10th Senate. And
it is a good thing that you mentioned Senator Ekweremadu, because I also had the opportunity to interview him at the time when it was raging. And yes, he did confirm there was a lot of work done in the National Assembly. Still, it didn't scale through.
Yes.
But let me come back to, you've stated your stance, and I think that's fair enough. We'll wait to see what the 10th Assembly will do, in spite of all of the, the agreements now between the president and the governors. But let me ask you this because we also saw this, 60 lawmakers visiting major businessman Alhaji Dan Tata in Kano. You're talking about bringing back a parliamentary system of government. You're talking about what our founding fathers wanted for Nigeria. It doesn't seem to have worked so far when we look at what we have. And the fact that there's still agitations here and there for a people's constitution. It might mean well for people, but if you don't carry them along, it might become a problem. So I want to take your stance on what you think of this proposal that will return to a parliamentary system of government.
You see, like I thought I have made myself clear on this matter. Let me again re-emphasize the fact that we started with parliamentary system in this country.
We did.
So those who are agitating for us to go back to that system should have gone again to ask us, what were those reasons that necessitated our migration from parliamentary to presidential? And I told you that it is the desire of the ethnic communities, ethnic nationalities in this country to be aptly represented in the National Assembly. And look, in all democracies, except America and Nigeria, no democracy has vested the power of appropriation in the National Assembly, absolutely. Now, the reason is this. You are dividing the cake, the national cake, as they call it. I don't know, I can't remember. And every community wants to be there to be sure that it's divided in such a way that it is equitably shared and that he has his own share. If we have let that function to the president, and we are unfortunate to find a president who believes erroneously that those resources should be channeled towards, taking care of his region or state or whatever, and the National Assembly has no hand in it, then we will run into that problem. It is to avoid that situation that the framers of our Constitution domicile the power of operation on the National Assembly and made it absolute that they can change, they can alter, they can do whatever. Now, let me tell you, a lot of people, I have seen lawyers, very senior lawyers, argue on television and everything and say, 1999 Constitution is not a people's constitution. Let me tell you why it is. When the military were going, they brought the draft. It was debated. They promulgated it. That draft created the office of the president, created the offices of governors.
Was debated where?
Wait. It was debated on the Constituent Assembly. Nicky Toby was the one leading that issue. And then, after creation...
There was a Constitutional Assembly?
Yes. There was
the eve of 1999?
No, that was the review when 1979, I'm trying to say.
Of course, 1979.
Yeah, wait. Now, and then they said, okay, throw it to the public. We have created office of the president. We have created office of governors. We have created local government chairman. All the offices created by the Constitution. And then we have created an institution to conduct election into these offices. When the time came for that institution to conduct election, not a single section of this country refused to partake in electing its chairman or governor or in participating in electing the president. At that stage, the people have accepted the constitution. That's the legal way to establish the how do I say, the acceptance of the constitution.
By reason of them not refusing to participate?
Exactly, by participating, sir. By participating, not by reason of not participating.
Well, Senator, I'm sure that there will be how will I put it now? There will be a debate, because what you have raised is actually a controversy. I mean, the fact because don't forget also
that there is no controversy about this.
Just a moment, don't forget that people were also coming from a military era where they had learned to do as they're told. But I mean, let us move away from that. What I really want to focus on is this issue of parliamentary system of government. You've talked about how, we have a representation as it currently stands. We have senators, and it's for a reason of balance. I mean, that's why we only have 3 senators per state, no matter how small or how big
equality of states.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've talked about that, and you've also talked about the House of Reps, the representation.
And they may be bicameral.
Interestingly, the bicameral legislature can also be functional in the parliamentary system of government, can't it? I mean, as we've seen in Britain, where there is a House of Lords and a House of Commons.
Yes.
So that
setting is slightly different, with due respect. Slightly different.
It is, but people
in their evolution and establishment, it's slightly different. You see, let us not confuse these issues.
Yes,
let us look at...
Distinguished, the reason I'm bringing this up is that some people have said we can have a mishmash. We can adopt our own, because what we have seen since our independence and even since the return of democracy is that whoever determines or whoever wants to be president will have to have deep pockets. And at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like there is, will I say, sufficient engagement with the Nigerian people.
You know my thinking?
My
thinking is that any reasonable thinking about the constitution of this country, if it has become necessary to do so, should be to migrate away from the parliamentary, to migrate away from the presidential, and look for a homegrown constitution that takes into account our population and our ethnic, multi-religious configuration. That will be my argument. But you see, you have tried parliamentary system, it has failed. It has failed. Nobody can argue about that.
Did it fail or just changed it?
It failed. It failed. Let us not go into those issues that made the failure of that parliamentary system by opening wounds that have already been...
Isn't this current system failing? This current presidential system that is not delivering security, that is not delivering economic prosperity, isn't it failing?
Well, I don't know what criteria you are using to determine the failure or success of it. But let me tell you something. It is not failing because we do not have a constitution that guarantees its success. It is failing because the participants have not been disciplined enough to follow the constitution. Why will a governor take an oath of office that he will do justice to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will, that he will not allow his personal interest to affect his official decision, and every aspect of his is in total violation of this provision? So it's not about the constitution. It is about the participant, the discipline of the political class to be able to respect the constitution of the people.
My colleague in Lagos, Ayo, has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Mokwe. It's actually in that same vein that I'd like to take you up on, Senator. The fact that, you talked about the participants being the #1 culprits. How then do we begin to reverse the trend?
Yes. Well, the way to reverse the trend is to hold them accountable.
How?
If a governor says, I, being the governor of Lagos State, for example, do solemnly swear that I will uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, that I will abide by the 3rd schedule of the Constitution, that I will not allow my personal interest to affect my official decision. And the next decision he takes is to take a university established by the state to his own backyard. Isn't that in breach? So we expected at that time the House of Assembly of that state to take action and say, look, Mr. Governor, you are in breach of the oath of your office, and therefore we are removing you from office. Fortunately for us, the Constitution didn't make provision for impeachment. What it made provision for is removal from office. Also, it's the participants. We all know it. We cannot claim not to know that.
Is there not a role, Senator? My apologies. Is there not a role for the political parties on whose platform the governors or the whoever comes into office? Is there not a role for the political parties themselves? Why field someone that you cannot control, that you cannot manage, or stem his tide?
Well, you see, let me again say that we were not too fortunate to have in 1999 people who really loved this country, that took the reins of the affairs of this country as governors and other players. We were not that fortunate. What they did was to get into office, they discovered money, and therefore they became rich enough to control everyone, and therefore felt safe enough to deviate from the Constitution and do what they feel was okay for them. And then that is what we have been riding on till tomorrow. This is a fact. Let us not hide away from these facts. We are all guilty in this game.
Okay.
The followers who will refuse, yes.
Yeah. So who then should be holding them to account? You mentioned the third schedule of the Constitution. The fourth schedule is also very clear, and you are one of those people who have talked about it. Now we are talking about multi-level policing, and one of the levels of policing is the community police, which should be ideally monitoring the local government, and all of that. And the governors have done what they have done, according to many people's opinions. So who should be holding the governors to account when they execute the Constitution in breach?
Electorates, through their representatives, either at state assembly or at national assembly. That's the ideal situation. But can we, in all honesty, say that our situation is not less than ideal? I hope you have an answer to that.
Senator, just one last thing. If you say it is the representatives and the electorates, who should be holding the electorates themselves accountable? Because most of them, the information around is that most of them don't even go back to their constituencies many times.
Look, under Section 63 of our Constitution, the Constitution had made provision for recall of people who have been elected to represent the community and who, in the opinion of the community, are not doing what they are supposed to be doing. That provision is made to give the electorates the power, to monitor their representatives. But you and me know that that is not what happened. So let us, please, I am not one of those who believe, and I honestly don't believe that our problem is our Constitution. No. Our problem is the participants in the democratic process who have refused to understand the virtue of being honest enough to run the offices to which they occupy based on the oath of office they have taken. Take the oath of office alone and use it as a yardstick and put it on the face of every elected person and see whether he will pass the litmus test of what is required of him under the oath of office he has taken.
So you think the process of recall is that easy and they should do it?
It's not about whether it is easy. It is the fact that the framers of our Constitution found it expedient to insert it there, and they could not have been inserting it simply because they wanted to increase the volume of the Constitution. It's meant to be used, but politicians have made it practically impossible for the electors to do that.
So is that not a challenge? Doesn't that mean that clause is failing?
It's
because
not failing.
If they are making it difficult for
anybody to use... It's not failing. Let me tell you. If every elected person who swore to uphold, protect, and defend that same Constitution and knew fully well that that Constitution contained that Section 63, and the people, electors, intend to exercise the powers vested on them by that provision, and instead of helping them to do so, he would rather frustrate them from doing so because he is probably the person who nominated that person to occupy that office. So how can you say it's the Constitution? It's not the Constitution. Chaplain, I have been sufficiently, let me say with due respect, educated on the contents and the spirit of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm one of those who have been so lucky to have someone who taught us what Constitution is all about. And after that, I did an extensive study about our constitution and our constitutional development. So it's not something that is debatable. But you see, at times, you have to respect, again, it's a constitutional right to respect people's opinion. But I can tell you, with all sincerity, our constitution has absolutely nothing to do with the failure of governance in this country.
So you blame it on the politicians?
On the political class.
They're politicians?
I don't know. Well, they are distinct and distinguishable.
How?
Distinguished. Political class, politicians. I mean, one and the same. Like 6.5.
Who are those in the political class?
You see, there are no two English words or expressions that are the same. But I can tell you that the political class, ordinarily, are those people who occupy offices created by the Constitution that have the responsibility to ensure the working of that Constitution. Politicians, every person who casts his vote or who campaigns for is a politician. But the issue is, what power does he have to influence the decision of government other than voting a person into office?
No, if someone casts his vote, doesn't make him a politician.
No.
Just a citizen who's performing his civic responsibility.
Ordinarily, I said ordinarily.
Yeah, maybe. But realistically, it's not.
Well, we can argue about this here and there, and at the end of the day, the public will have the benefit of knowing who is right or who is wrong on this conversation.
I find it very interesting you say you've been sufficiently educated on the Constitution.
Yeah.
Have you also championed an education of many Nigerians on knowing their Constitution?
How do you do that? How is it my responsibility?
You haven't even thought about it.
How is it my It's the responsibility of people like you.
You're passing it on to the media.
Yes. The media.
So not the political class this time.
No.
All right, Senator Bala Nala is a former Deputy Minority Leader. Thank you for coming on today on the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Osop. Goodbye.
What a start to a beautiful week. I know it's going to be a great one, regardless of what is happening in the economy. Have a great one. I'm Malpo Yusuf.
And let all authorities know that, as we say on the street is not smiling. Pay attention. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your week.